Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, welcome back into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the Scouting and Recruiting Analyst for Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube channel. You know what you need to do first. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, make sure your notifications are turned on for our YouTube channel by hitting that bell so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. I am here each week to break down the latest in Crimson Tide football recruiting news. And on today's episode of The Process, I want to preview a potential big summer on the recruiting trail for the Crimson Tide. For those of you who have been following the Crimson Tide's 2023 recruiting efforts, you are well informed on how many commits the Crimson Tide have, with them having 3 verbal commitments at the moment. That is a very small number considering the amount of guys they hope to have at the end of the 2023 recruiting cycle. And I think this summer will give the Crimson Tide that boost they need in this 2023 recruiting class. So that is what I want to do on this episode of The Process. Give you guys a preview of a couple of guys who will announce their decisions this summer. A couple of guys who I feel the Crimson Tide are in a very good position for. I will also talk about a couple of guys who have scheduled official visits to Alabama, or guys who are thinking about scheduling official visits to Tuscaloosa as well. But before I get an opportunity to dive into all of that, I want to remind you that you can call into The Process at 205-984-3222. Call that number, leave your recruiting question via voicemail, and your question could be answered on a later episode of The Process. But now I'm going to dive right into our discussion and talk about a guy who the Crimson Tide recently offered, who they could possibly get on campus this summer for an unofficial visit. And I am talking about 2024 4-star quarterback Michael VanBuren from St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, Maryland. He actually picked up an offer from the Crimson Tide on Monday when the Tide's cornerbacks coach Bryce Thornton traveled to Maryland, as the Crimson Tide's coaching staff is currently on the recruiting trail checking out prospects all over the country. And Michael VanBuren was one of the prospects who they checked in on Monday, and he received an offer from the Crimson Tide after Robinson saw him practice. He said he felt humbled and blessed to receive an offer from a dominant and historical program like Alabama. He also talked about the Crimson Tide being a school that has had a lot of success at developing quarterbacks over the last 3 seasons. When you take a look at Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, and also Bryce Young, with them winning the Heisman Trophy on last season. He also said he was a fan of the Crimson Tide's explosive spread offense. When Robinson saw him practice, he said he sort of reminded him of Bryce Young. I can see why he might have said that. First, look at his size. He's 6'1", weighing approximately 180 pounds. That is a similar frame to Bryce Young. He also has a very quick release, has a nice deep ball as well. He can move around the pocket with a lot of speed. So when you take a look at Michael VanBuren, the Crimson Tide are the 18th D1 program to offer the St. Francis Academy product. Like I said, he's looking to get to Tuscaloosa this summer to take his first unofficial visit to UA since picking up an offer from the Crimson Tide on Monday. He's not the only prospect who plans to be in Tuscaloosa in the future. 2023 4-star defensive back Bryce Thornton plans to be in Tuscaloosa as well in the near future, as he wants to take an official visit to Alabama after releasing a top 5. Thornton is a product of Milton High School in Milton, Georgia. Like I said, he did release his top 5 recently, including the Crimson Tide, along with some other top programs like Georgia, Florida, LSU, and also Miami. Currently standing at 5'11", weighing approximately 180 pounds, has a nice thick frame. He will most likely play safety at the next level. During his junior season, he showed he was really able to attack the football. And he's also a guy who has a lot of speed, the type of speed that changes the game when he catches an interception, as he's a threat to turn that interception into a pick 6 each time. He also was a threat in the return game from Milton High School this past season. He said he has been building his relationship with the Crimson Tide's cornerback coach Bryce Robinson as of late. Said that is his guy. He said that they joke and laugh about a lot of things. He also said that he gets a lot of knowledge from Robinson as far as what he needs to do to become a better defensive back. So the Crimson Tide are listed in his top 5. He wants to take an official visit to Alabama hopefully this summer. He also said he wants to camp in Tuscaloosa. When you take a look at Thornton, I think he's one of those guys who the Crimson Tide wants to get on campus to camp to evaluate him some more, as far as wants to possibly take a commitment from him. So Thornton is a guy I would definitely keep my eyes on this summer as the Crimson Tide try to get a lot of guys on campus for unofficial visits, official visits, and also on campus for camps to evaluate them a little bit more. A guy who has set in an official visit date to Alabama is 5-star wide receiver Brandon Ennis. He's definitely a prospect to continue to keep your eyes on. We've talked about Ennis a lot of times. Like I said, he had previous visits to Alabama locked in, but unfortunately, he was unable to get to Tuscaloosa, so those visits were called off. But he has locked in an official visit date to Tuscaloosa. The first official visit date he has locked in is he will be on the campus of the University of Alabama on the weekend of June 3rd for that official. Of course, he's one of the top wide receivers in the 2023 recruiting class. Outstanding route runner, currently standing at 6'1", weighing approximately 190 pounds. Can also make some plays after the catch. When I always talk about him, I talk about his all-around athleticism. Played quarterback a little bit for American Heritage High School during his junior season, just showing off his versatility. So the Crimson Tide will have an opportunity to get him on campus. I do feel that they have a lot of work to do in this recruitment, although they have been very involved in his recruitment for quite some time. I think getting him on campus can go a long way in their push for him, as some of the top programs continue to push for the 5-star wide receiver. When you take a look at USC, also looking at Ohio State as well. Oklahoma had his commitment at one time when he had Lincoln Riley as their head coach, so it will be interesting to see how Ennis' recruitment continues to develop as the Crimson Tide will get him on campus for that official visit during the month of June, during the first weekend of June, on the weekend of June 3rd. So that is an official visit to look out for, along with an official visit from 4-star offensive lineman will conform out of Northridge High School in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the hometown target for the Crimson Tide, who's one of the top offensive linemen in the 2023 recruiting class, with him standing at 6'8", weighing approximately 300 pounds. Guy with some great mobility, can finish blocks, but I think his ability to move is the thing that really stands out to me. His quick feet. When you take a look at him in his size, he projects to be a tackle at the next level. The Crimson Tide really seem to like him. They have hosted him several times over the last few weeks, including a trip to the University of Alabama that he took on A-Day a couple of weeks ago. And he told me after he visited the Crimson Tide on A-Day that he plans to officially visit Alabama as well. He wants to officially visit most likely all of the schools currently listed in his top 5 that he did release recently, include the Tide in that top 5, along with Tennessee, Ole Miss, Auburn, and Oklahoma. So Wilkin Formby is definitely a guy to keep your eyes on throughout the summer. He's one of those prospects who wants to announce a commitment before his senior season begins. So he's one of those guys I wanted to discuss on today's show who could possibly commit to the Tide this summer. Again, Wilkin Formby is a 6'8" offensive lineman out of Northridge High School. He is a hometown target for the Crimson Tide, so he has a lot of connections to the program. Grew up an Alabama fan, with him staying in Tuscaloosa as well. So Wilkin Formby is definitely a guy to keep your eyes on as well. A new name I want to talk about today is 4-star athlete Jacoby Johnson. He's a product of Mustang High School in Mustang, Oklahoma. When you take a look at the state of Oklahoma, the Crimson Tide have a lot of targets compared to previous recruiting classes. When we take a look at that state, of course, they grabbed Josh Jacobs from the state of Oklahoma in the past, but just looking at those guys who are located in that state this year, the Crimson Tide has a vested interest in a couple of those guys, including Jacoby Johnson, along with Cole Adams, who is a wide receiver out of Oklahoma. But taking a look at Jacoby Johnson, he actually unofficially visited Alabama when they were going through spring practice. He had an opportunity to spend a couple of days in Tuscaloosa. He watched practices, met with Nick Saban, and he told me that he was really impressed with what the Crimson Tide were doing during that particular spring practice session. The Crimson Tide's wide receiver coach Harmon Wiggins actually made it out to Oklahoma to check on Jacoby Johnson recently as well. So the Crimson Tide really seem to be interested in this 6'3" or possibly 180-pound athlete. When you take a look at his skill set, he's a bit of an interesting prospect because he could be a wide receiver at the next level, or he could be a defensive back. He's one of those really interesting prospects because he looks good on both sides of the football in terms of his route running, in terms of his ability to attack the football as a wide receiver, but also taking a look at his movement and coverage. It's really above average, and I think he's one of the more elite pass coverage guys in this 2023 recruiting class, and his ability to attack the football and high point the football that comes out on both sides of the football as well. So Jacoby Johnson is the guy I will look at as well in this 2023 recruiting class. Hopefully the Crimson Tide will get him back on campus during the summer, possibly for another visit or possibly the camp to evaluate him some more. But he was on campus recently. The Crimson Tide's wide receiver coach Harmon Wiggins got to Mustang, Oklahoma, had an opportunity to catch up with Johnson and his teammates as well. And speaking of Crimson Tide coaches hitting the recruiting trail, Harmon Wiggins is not the only Alabama coach on the recruiting trail at the moment. Robert Gillespie, the Crimson Tide's running back coach, has been getting out there. The Crimson Tide's offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien, as well. The Crimson Tide's offensive line coach Eric Warford has hit up a couple of different schools, including some in-state schools like Ennis High School, which is the home of 2023 three-star offensive lineman, and Georgia commit Jaquez McElderry, who is considered one of the Crimson Tide's top flip targets in this 2023 recruiting cycle as well. So the Crimson Tide's coaching staff is currently hitting the recruiting trail, extending new offers as well, with that offer going out to Michael VanBuren on Monday. So we see that the Crimson Tide's coaches are continuing to evaluate guys and getting to see them in person, possibly during spring practice, to go a long way in evaluating these guys in hopes that they will get them on campus during the summer as well, to evaluate them some more for camps and also just those officials and unofficial visits. But speaking of the summer and speaking of the Crimson Tide possibly having a humongous summer, trying to continue to add prospects to their 2023 recruiting class, I think it's a couple of guys who I feel the Tide are in a good position for, who you should definitely keep your eyes on in terms of guys who want to make a decision before their senior seasons begin. And the first guy I want to talk about is Jaden Wayne, the 5-star defensive end out of Lincoln High School in Tacoma, Washington, has stated on multiple occasions that he feels that the Crimson Tide are at the top of his recruitment. He is a guy who is leaning more towards announcing a commitment before his senior season begins, but he's also one of those guys who is keeping his recruitment open and trying to visit as many schools as possible to get the best feel for him. But I feel Alabama will continue to be in a solid and strong position with Wayne. Looking at his skill set, he fits the mold of what Alabama is looking for at the edge rusher, at the edge rusher position, at the outside linebacker position. Long, lengthy, physical, explosive guys off the snap of the football, guys who work really well in space. And I think Jaden Wayne is the perfect fit for the Crimson Tide outside linebacker role. Like I said, he's one of those guys who want to announce a commitment before their senior seasons begin. So Jaden Wayne was one of those prospects to keep your eyes on, along with Peter Woods, the 5-star defensive end out of Thompson High School, is currently down to his final 4 programs. Of course, the Crimson Tide are included in that top 4. You could have guessed that they were going to be involved because of how involved they have been in his recruitment. A lot more than the other schools listed in this top 4 at the moment. When you take a look at Oklahoma, Clemson, and Florida, of course, with him being in-state recruit, you can easily see why he has visited Alabama a lot more in those other programs. And just taking a look at his skill set, he's such a great athlete, so technically sound, strong, just a lot of great things. When you take a look at his film, there's not too many weaknesses that you could point out when you take a look at what Peter Woods brings to the table. Can rush from different spots along the defensive line. He can come from the edge. He can rush from the inside. Will most likely be an inline defensive end, but could grow into a nose guard and be effective at that position. I think he's going to be one of the more versatile defensive line prospects you could bring in this 2023 recruiting class. So Peter Woods is a guy who wants to announce a commitment before his senior season begins. With that top 4, the Crimson Tide will most likely get an official visit from him before he makes a decision. Even if they did not get an official visit from Peter Woods, he's one of those guys who I feel they will be in a good position with no matter what. If he did not visit again and visit all of those other schools, I still feel that the Crimson Tide would be in a good position to get a commitment from Peter Woods, just based on how they have recruited him over the last couple of years and based on his relationship with their coaching staff at the moment. Peyton Kirkland is a guy who I have not talked about a lot, but he's a prospect to also know. He's a guy who's going to announce a commitment on July 23rd, along with a couple of other Alabama targets. We can take a look at Malik Bryant, the 4-star outside linebacker out of Florida, who's also going to announce his commitment along with Kirkland on July 23rd. He plans to take visits to Alabama a couple of times before he makes that decision, but his recruitment is another one to definitely keep your eyes on. Just taking a look at Kirkland, currently standing at 6'7", weighing more than 300 pounds, one of the top tackle prospects in this 2023 recruiting class. It looks as if the Crimson Tide are going to land a couple of more offensive linemen in this 2023 recruiting cycle compared to the 2022 class. Of course, they landed Tyler Booker, Elijah Pritchett, and also Dane Shore. I think they're going to land a couple of more offensive linemen compared to those three guys. So take a look at Kirkland, also Olas Elanin, the guy who I was talking about a little bit here, and also talking about 2023 offensive lineman will conform. All of those guys are top prospects for the Crimson Tide when it comes to the offensive line position. But looking at Olas's recruitment, currently has that top four, along with Alabama listed in it. You have Georgia, you also have Ohio State, you have Miami. So you have three of college football's blue bloods at the moment. Just taking a look at Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. You also have Miami, who is becoming a great recruiting team at the moment because of their staff. Their staff is really recruiting really well, and they are having an impact on the recruiting trail in terms of prospects, saying that they are building relationships with them. And I think that is one of the reasons why they are currently listed in Olas Elanin's top four. When I recently got an opportunity to talk to Elanin, he told me that the Crimson Tide were definitely one of his top programs. He has said in the past that they were at the top of his recruitment. I don't think a lot has changed based on his ability to get out to Alabama. I had an opportunity to spend 2 days in Tuscaloosa a couple of weeks ago as well, and he's one of those prospects who has immediately said that he wants to hopefully be done with this recruitment before his senior season begins. So Olas Elanin is a guy who could commit to the Tide before the summer wraps up. And I think this is just a quick preview of some of the developments going on when it comes to the Crimson Tide's 2023 recruiting efforts for the summer. There's still a lot to go. There's still a lot of guys who are going to schedule unofficial visits, official visits, camp dates. The Crimson Tide are going to evaluate those guys. They're going to get them on campus, get their families on campus, try to continue to build a relationship with those guys. There's a long way to go in the 2023 recruiting cycle overall. The summer, I think, is going to be a huge part of the Crimson Tide's 2023 recruiting effort, and I think it's going to play a huge role in the end of the Crimson Tide's 2023 recruiting class and how it shakes up. I think it's going to have a huge impact on it. So it's definitely something to be excited about if you are an Alabama fan. But that is what I want to talk about on today's show. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, if you are a subscriber, hit that notification bell, be notified when we drop content on our YouTube channel. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst at Touchdown Alabama.